Project Workbench. Now, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like the show... I'm sorry, what's it called again?
It's called Fascinating Fights.
And where can one see that again?
On YouTube. You can go to youtube.com/Daniel J. Glenn. Everything's on there.
So it sounds like Fascinating Fights was born from your podcasting.
Yes, in a weird way.
Now, tell me about that. Like, what interests you in podcasting?
It's like the golden age of radio in a way, where people... Because you have to be in a certain area to have a certain station to get a certain show, if it's not syndicated in your area, if you like radio. Lots of radio shows that I like that I can't get. Podcasting, if you like someone and you like what they do, you download their show. You don't have to be getting it on an antenna or anything. It's amazing. Now the problem is that because it's so easy to do, there's lots of bad stuff out there. Now I'm not suggesting my show's better than all the rest.
I'll suggest it. I'll say it, man.
The show is a reflection of my personal interests, and I find interesting things about almost anyone or anything. But I like very unique things. So, for example, one of my favorite guests is a guy who grew up on Alcatraz, which is kind of interesting when you think about, like, who does, I didn't know that was a thing. I thought it was just prisoners, but no, they had a whole thriving community on there. So things I can learn about.
Interesting.
I love Monopoly, so I found there's actually a guy locally to Los Angeles who is a nationally ranked Monopoly champion. So I had him on the show. Yeah, he's good. He's in a documentary, the whole thing. I love ants, so I found an ant expert. There's a great two guys. They wrote a book called The Economics of the Undead. So I love a podcast called Freakonomics, where they basically take economic principles and apply them to real life. They had this whole thing about the economics of the zombie apocalypse, which you think your eyes would glaze over and roll back. But it is so fascinating the way they talk about even resources, even a conversation about what's currency in the zombie apocalypse. Money doesn't mean anything because paper money means nothing. If you don't think gold and silver are going to be the future currency, then what is it? Well, there's actually a breakdown. It needs to have some inherent value in itself. It needs to be divisible. It needs to be easy to carry.
Beef jerky is a response to all of these things.
Yes! No, but beef jerky could totally be currency. That's why cigarettes are currency, because you can use them to smoke, they're divisible, and they're easy to carry. There's a list of them. I'm missing some of them. Yeah, but this is the kind of stuff, I love hearing things like this,
It's interesting, you've actually sort of expanded on something that I've been trying to say for years, but haven't been able to articulate it as well as you do.
Oh.
One of the things that I find fascinating, which is the reason I started pursuing this interviewing nonsense, is because I love learning about people's passions that aren't mine. Because I'm always like, I'm kind of like, well, I think R2-D2s are cool and Batmobiles are cool, and probably so does everyone else. Not the case. And what's interesting is you find people who are just as passionate, if not more so, about their stupid bullshit as I am about my stupid bullshit. And I find that fascinating. Like I'll go to a convention. Like I went to a convention a couple months ago, WonderCon, and next door to it was like a fitness convention. I'm like, I should get into that hobby. That sounds great. And then like recently at Kamikaze, next to it was Obesity Week. So it was like a convention for not fit people. And I'm like, now that's a hobby I can get into.
Is that true?
It's true. But being facetious again, I tend to do that. But I certainly understand the draw of learning more about other people's passions. I kudos to you for delving even further into it. Like I'm sort of like, well, maybe I'll talk to a guy who makes a different Batmobile. He's probably weird.
Right.
But the ants, man, that's crazy.
Well, so I'm going to tell you something about ants.
Please.
It's funny that you mentioned that because we have two different approaches, if that's how you approach it. Because indirectly, I'm asking about people's passions. But that's not my main focus. To be perfectly honest, my main focus is self-serving and completely selfish, which is I like to learn, and I want to know what an expert knows. So I love having firsts on the show, or bests in the world. I'm having an international cheesemonger champion. I don't even know what cheesemongering is, but I got him. He's going to be on the show. I have this number one expert in ants. Ants, it seems like they don't know what they're doing, but they're highly sophisticated organisms, and in reality, their interactions as organisms mimic our interactions in the human brain. how they connect and exchange information is very similar to how our neurons exchange information via chemicals. Very, very similar. And so the person who's on the show, she is an expert in this thing, wrote a book about it, and we talked about how, let's say they're looking for food, right? Well, the number of interactions of ants coming back into the cave, the ant hole, whatever it is. The ant cave without stuff.
Yeah.
That frequency increases, which causes other ants to come out and look for more stuff. But it's interactions, specifically interactions.
Interesting.
But I love this type of stuff. So
now, couldn't you learn that on Wikipedia? Like, why do you have to talk to people?
No, it's not the same.
Is it not?
No, because then you're learning facts in a way that it's just black and white. If this goes back to your passion thing. If you're talking to someone who's really into ants, you know what I mean, like into ants, then they're excited to tell you about ants.
Yeah.
And that, I remember that. For me,
I see.
Again, selfish, when I hear people talk about exciting things, my brain clicks on when something interests me. I can tell you weird facts about certain things because when I heard it, I was like, whoa. And my brain was like, yeah, let's write that down. Let's keep that.
Yeah.
But there's a million interactions a day that my brain's like, that's so mundane, it goes away. Like, I bet you don't remember, well, you're a billionaire playboy, but like when I drive to work, my drive to work is almost automatic.
Oh, sure.
My brain,
sure.
it goes, unless I almost got into an accident or saw something weird, it's not going to stick in my head.
You know what I want to do? I want to talk to someone who can explain the thing to me where you've driven to work, but you have no memory of driving to work. Like you were not conscious during. Have you ever done that? Like you drive somewhere and
Absolutely.
You're like, how did I get here?
Every morning. Well,
so weird.
So here, I can tell you a little bit about
I feel like that way about my 20s. Like, how did I get from?
There's an interesting thing that happens in your brain where you ever had something, I hope this doesn't happen to you, but something bad happened to you, or something like you're almost getting into a car accident and time seems to slow down.
Sure.
So that's the reason that's happening is your brain is actually processing every second of what's going on. So your brain is like writing down every frame of video, right?
Yeah.
When you're driving to work and you've passed the same intersection,
It's the exact opposite.
Yeah, no, it is because it's redundant information that you don't need to take in, throws away. And so you can go your whole trip, your brain's somewhere else, and that's how you miss it.
Well, that certainly explains my 20s. Now I got to tell you, man, I'm in the dark here. Mm-hmm. Like what you do all these interesting things. Like you got the YouTube show, you got the podcast thing. Like what is your end game? What do you want to be? Do you want to be like a YouTuber? Do you want to make cat videos? Mm. Do you want to own an auto dealership? What is your what are you? I assume all these things you're doing are building up to something you hope will materialize. What is that thing?
You know, I would love to have. It seems very like bottom rung type of stuff, but I'd love to have a small media empire of. But of like fun little things that I can do and that would generate income that I could do that for a living. So if I had the web series was making enough money and the podcast was making enough money where you can do just like you get to do and pursue your passions, which is a way more fun way to live than having to go clock into into a job every single day. Now, look, I have a great job. I love the people I work with. But to be able to do your passions for your job is the goal of everyone. And so that's kind of what I want to do, is have 2 or 3 or 4 different projects that are simultaneous that generate enough money to live off of.